Hello, Watch Forest Focus. This weekend is the game that could go a long way towards saving Nottingham Forest, or it's the game that could go a long way towards relegating them as the Reds take on Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. Joining me to look ahead to the game and give us the lowdown on the already relegated Blades is Hal from the Sheffield United Way. Hal, sorry to say already relegated. It's not a good way to start, but how are you doing?
Well, I was doing good. I'm now deaf after that intro. That's the loudest thing I've ever heard, and I live near an Air Force base, so that was pretty impressive.
I said on yesterday's podcast, I hate our intro and it's going at the end of the season. So listeners have only got about three more games to endure it, and then I'll be picking
Well, of
something a
course,
bit
I
more
can
chill.
then hear it next season when we're both in the championship.
I don't think we will be, but we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that. As always, we kick these shows off just hearing from our guests what they've made of their team season. Obviously, it's been a rough one for you guys. Did you see this coming, or did you think you'd be kind of where Forest are, or even higher in the table when you before a ball was kicked?
When we first got promoted, I thought we'd be all right, and yeah, exactly sort of like where Forest are right now is the sort of thing I was expecting fourth, fifth from bottom. And then when we sold Iliman Ndiaye and Sander Berger, I thought, here we go, it's all over before a ball's even been kicked. In the first game at home against Palace, even though we only lost 1-0, we actually didn't look great. We didn't really ever look like scoring. Playing a kid, Will Asula, up top, who we hadn't really seen at all play the previous season. You think you've got to start the Premier League with a stronger 11 than the one you finished the Championship season with, and we didn't do that. And even though the first few games we only lost by the odd goal, the writing was on the wall because it always felt like, even though it was only the odd goal, we weren't really creating much. And that was a huge concern. I'd always rather be missing chances than not creating them. And we were not really creating them. And then the ones we were creating, we weren't always taking. And actually, even that early game at Forest, that was a match where we sort of played all right, particularly second half. Took a chance that, again, isn't like a repeatable action because it wasn't exactly like one that was training ground manoeuvre. And that's sort of been the early tail of the season. And then it's just got so much worse with hammerings thrown in, and they've sort of felt like they've kind of continued even with a change of manager, even though we've been, playing better.
Did you think Wilder might turn it round in his second stint, or did you think it's a bad move for managers to come back before he even arrived?
I didn't think he'd turn it around, and that's nothing against Wilder. I just thought by the time we made the change after that 5-0 thumping at Burnley, the heads were two down, and even the world's greatest motivator wasn't going to change it, and even the world's greatest tactician wasn't going to change it. You could have given Pep the job, Klopp, anyone. It was too far gone, and we just didn't have the players, and we don't have the players, and it isn't as good a squad as necessary for a Premier League that seems to each season get stronger and stronger. The players seem to get more athletic, quicker, and our players don't. So we've got a threadbare squad. We've got a mountain of injuries, which we've had for 3 seasons now, but it just seems like it never gets any easier. And we don't have the legs, so we chase the game. Like, we hardly have any of the ball. So we're constantly tired because, 60 minutes we've been having 26% possession, and then your opposition can bring on 4 or 5 quality players with fresh legs, and we don't have that quality on the bench. Plus, our first team is tired. So it's been a terrible combination. I think the more subs rule has hurt us possibly more than the terrible VAR decisions, of which Forest have been amongst as well.
Yes, we certainly have. We certainly have. You've got 3 games left then to, I don't know, try and take some momentum into next season, I guess. Forest fans are a bit worried because obviously there's no love lost between the clubs. There's a bit of a rivalry. So Sheffield United should be motivated for this one on paper, your players. Do you think they will be? Will they come out firing, or will their tails be completely down after relegation?
No, it'll be a case of exactly the pressure is off. Our fans will be well up for it. Yours will as well. Yeah, you're right. There's no love lost, and that goes back decades, not just recent playoff shenanigans and some unpleasantness. It's decades long, and we would want to. I think many. I mean, I personally don't care, but I know there'll be some Blades fans that will really want to relegate Forest or help relegate Forest. I only care about Sheffield United, and the fact that we're down means mentally I'm switched off for this season completely. I only want to see players now that are going to play next season. I'm not interested in anyone getting a shirt that is not going to be here next season, and I'm pretty sure Chris Wilder knows who those players are.
You've got quite a few of our old players there, Osborne, Robinson, Brereton, Diaz. I'm particularly interested in Brereton Diaz because I'd quite like to see us sign him, if I'm honest, from what I've seen of him in Sheffield United colours. What have you made of them, and specifically Brereton Diaz? Am I mad to want to bring him in next season if we can get him or not?
Well, Ben Osborne's my favourite player, and that's because I can relate to him. He's short, like me, he's left footed, like me, and he always gets stuck in positions he doesn't want to play, like I used to when I played football. Unlike me, he seems very intelligent, and he's quite witty on social media, which obviously is exactly like me. So I like him, and he always gives 100%. And I was terrible at football, but I always gave everything. So I really like Ben Osborne, and the more people have a go at Ben, the more I double down on that, because that's just my contrarian spirit and attitude. Jack Robinson is our best defender, and that'll surprise a lot of Forest fans. And he initially started, and he was dreadful. He was awful for us for the first part of his Blades career, and then he turned it around, and I've been a big fan, which anyone who watches Sheffield United Way will know I've been saying that for a long time. I wanted to change the narrative. Thankfully, it has changed, and it's changed by his actions, and he'll probably win Player of the Season in a team that's conceded 1 million goals in defence. That's quite impressive. And Ben Brereton Diaz has got a point to prove, and he's proven it. And he's proven he can play at the top level in the hardest league in the world, which I know some people didn't believe he could. Certainly, Villarreal would not have thought that he could, because they binned him out. They thought, oh, he's not good enough. Well, he is good enough. And he would definitely be able to do a job for a better team that's going to provide even more service for him, because he's done really well for us.
Where's he playing? Because he can play out wide or through the middle. Has he exclusively played through the middle for you guys then?
A bit of both, actually, and there's been times in game, even when he started up front, that he's drifted out to the left, and we've seen what he can do. And actually, he's formulated quite a nice pairing with Ben Osborne and on that left hand side, and he's looked good. But he's a provider as well, with assists for others, and he gets into those dangerous positions. And I always feel more confident with him one-on-one with a keeper than pretty much anyone else in our squad, and that is from the middle when he's like that. But even if he cuts in, coming in from that left hand side, it's really good to see. It's great having a player like that is so adept at both positions. It's great.
There is one other player I should ask about that I forgot, who was in our academy, who never quite made it, but I thought he would, and he looked really good, is Ammir Hodzic, who looks like he's done really well for you. Is he not quite Premier League level, or is he worthy of another chance, either with you guys in another season or if someone buys him?
It's the latter. I mean, he will leave, I'm certain of it. And he is Premier League quality, but he's been disappointing. Is that a bit harsh of a word this season? Because he was so good last season. He was one of our star players in a team full of star players. It was really hard to pick a player of the season last season, because there were so many that sort of put their hand up and said, well, I've had a great season, Iliman and Dai for many. But he was excellent, and hasn't been quite as excellent this time around. But he's still a quality player, and lots of excitement, I'm sure, around him if the team signs him, because he'll probably be really motivated to prove that this season was largely because he was playing with Sheffield United.
I've seen a few of your games recently. Like, I saw bits of the Burnley game, and I know you lost that heavily, but you did create quite a lot. And not all fans play stock in XG, but I think you had a higher XG than them in the game. Have you actually been playing a bit better recently, or is it just a poor team ultimately?
Well, that's actually why I put the playing better in quotes, because we have been playing better, creating chances, like you say. We started pretty much every game under Wilder well, but we're still losing, and sometimes losing heavily. And it's been really, really tough as a fan to watch this, because I think that Newcastle game, the most recent one, first half, if you watched this first half, you wouldn't have been able to tell which one was Newcastle and which one was Sheffield United. I mean, I don't just mean that because we're both West Stripes. I mean because we played so well in that first half. And then the second half happened, and it was Jekyll and Hyde. And that's been a case for so long. And like what I was saying with the fatigue, we don't have as much of the ball. But we are quite good on the break, but we're just not always great at taking our chances. And we might only get 3, 4 a game, good chances, real chances, clear-cut chances, and we've got to take them. But I think because the players know that, there's actually, in the head, there's more pressure. I've got to take this chance. I can't miss it. I might not get another one in this game. Whereas if you're at a Man City, then you're probably going to get another 3 chances as a player on your own. Our whole team's going to get 3.
Have you got other areas where you can hurt us? I suppose I'm talking about our set-piece defending. I don't know if you've seen how bad it is. The record is pretty embarrassing, 23 goals conceded. Will you offer a threat from there? Do you offer a threat from just open play and control of the ball, or is it exclusively on the break?
And we've only looked good at set pieces, I think, at Luton away and Newcastle away, as in attacking. Defending, we've been awful. I mean, feels like a similar story. We've looked susceptible. Our marking, I mean, sometimes it feels like we're doing zonal marking, which I've never been a fan of, at set pieces. It just seems like there's players getting free headers, sometimes 2 free headers, and we don't seem to be able to pick up man. It seems like there's players in our squad that will happily watch a runner from deep and go, oh, someone really should be picking that player up. I wonder who'll do that. And that's really frustrating as a fan, because as a fan, you just can't legislate for players either losing their man or not following, clearly in some cases, runners that are so blatantly obvious, because lots of teams have tall and big, imposing players in the Premier League. It feels like more than we saw, certainly last season in the Championship, and we just haven't been able to cope, and feels like we've got quite a small squad. I don't know if we necessarily do. I haven't actually looked at like the height stats. It feels like we've got one of the least physically imposing sides that's ever graced the Premier League.
Yeah, we're the same. I mean, I've watched players do that. Even on Saturday, Morgan Gibbs-White, who we'll get onto, was just for some reason he's marking Vardiol, and he just runs off him. So yeah, it's the story of our season. Before I get to our players, I want to talk about a couple of your players, because you do seem to have talented players. I'm not. Sounds like I'm taking the piss there. I'm not. You do generally have.
No, we do.
Like Hamer was a player I would have liked us to sign. Is he the pick of the bunch? Are there others that we should be watching out for?
Well, you know what, Matt? I think that's a really good point. We do have good players, and that's actually why it's so frustrating this season. We did lose 2 of our best, but we've still got some good players. Gus Hamer's been fantastic. What a signing. I think he's been better than Sander Berge. Possibly he's offered us more. He's certainly created more than Sander usually does. Certainly Sander's created this season for Burnley. Burnley fans will tell you that Sander's probably been their player of the season, but in a very different way. And the reason I say he replaced Sander is not like for like in terms of position, because he was the player that came in when we sold Sander, and for all intents and purposes, he is a midfielder. Sander is a midfielder. If we're going to get into advanced playmaker and deep-lying defensive midfielder, then fine, you can say they're different. But if you're old school, then midfielder. So yeah, Gus has been really good. Again, another contender for player of the season. But there's been other signings that we thought would be contenders, that we were so excited about, and they've really not worked. And actually, when you've only got a little bit of money and you are Sheffield United and you can't go out and sign, well, as many players as Forest did last season, you've got to get it right. And we got Benny Traore massively wrong. Vinicius Souza, I think a lot of people would argue, wrong, although there's been times when he's looked absolutely brilliant. Mason Holgate is up there with, like, has he worked, hasn't he? He got sent off for an awful red against Brighton, which you probably saw. I mean, terrible. What was he even thinking? Some fans have never forgiven him for that. He's let men go, he's given away penalties, and there's been other games when he's looked like our best defender. So it's been a real mixed bag, and at times it's been hard to work out. Have we been good, or have we just made bad signings?
What's going on with the goalkeepers as well? That was another one I can ask. You've got Foderingham, who I think always looks good, but does he not fancy him? He bought Gerbic, who doesn't seem to be very good. Who might start in goal in this one?
I think Wes will play. I don't think Gerbic will play again for Sheffield United ever again. I think Gerbic has looked so bad that it'd be hard for him to get back in. There's probably a keeper in there, but we've not seen it. I mean, the first time I saw Gerbic, I messaged Nick, who I do this channel with, and I was like, I'm not sure this guy can keep. And we had a little exchange back and forth about how many saves is he actually going to make. I think it was Wolves away was the first time we messaged, and he'd been in the team for like 3 or 4 games by then. We go, he's finally made a save. So we were really worried early on. Like, I'd watched loads of clips of him. I'd done loads of research, and the clips I'd seen, he'd made some amazing saves. But it just goes to show what YouTube show reels can actually do, for anyone, because he's not looked good, but he can't have got to Atletico Madrid without being a good keeper. So I'm still perplexed by that one. Maybe it's his mentality. Maybe he's come in and gone, I'm better than this, can't be bothered. And Wes, the reason he's not been playing was he doesn't want to sign a new contract. And so, the manager sort of said, well, if you don't want to sign a new contract, we don't want you playing. But now his hands have kind of been tied because Wes is better.
Yeah, we've got a keeper like that. Vlachodimos, who played for Benfica, played in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, Greek international, and then he arrived from us. His save percentage was like 45% when he played. Fans, he got the reputation of, if a shot's on target, it's going in. So yeah, there's a few similarities between our teams, which are a bit worrying because you've been relegated and we might be as well. What I know, obviously, you've shipped a load of goals, so you do have weaknesses. But what are the biggest weaknesses that Forest are going to look to exploit on Saturday, do you think?
Honestly, where do we begin? I'll just keep it brief then. I mean, this might be a very different Sheffield United performance because, like we said, the pressure's off. So you might see a totally different Blades side. But we're very susceptible, as I've already mentioned, for defending set pieces of any kind. Runners in behind, in any kind of pace. We seem to be, certainly on the left-hand side, I would say, as in your right. That would be an area, but I don't want to give too much away. That would be an area that... I would be frightened of if you have real pace on the right hand side. And I think Alanga, you probably do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we've got a lot of pace to burn. I mean, we do have a lot of good forwards. Our problem's defending and keeping the ball out. So I would back us to score. I mean, which players are you worried about? I don't know how much you've seen of us actually. Are there any specific Forest players that you're looking at and thinking, oh, he could really hurt us?
Well, I mentioned Alanga. Hudson-Odoi is obviously a very good player. We all love Morgan Gibbs-White. I mean, if he wasn't injured, although I guess you never really know with injuries. But Taiwo Awoniyi, I know he's had a thigh injury, so he probably won't be involved, but he's a big handful. But Chris Wood will probably play. And, he's the kind of striker we'll probably be seeing a lot more of that kind of type of striker next season. So let's see how we can handle him.
I want to ask a bit more about Morgan Gibbs-White. So he missed the penalty against us, obviously, that sent us to Wembley. You're shaking your head for listeners, not viewers. One of the best moments in our history, and revenge for 2003. My lowest moment as a Forest fan when you guys beat us in the semi-finals at Bramall Lane. So, that was great for us. It must have been painful for you. But you were saying you love Morgan. You've got no real will towards him at all for that penalty miss.
Oh no! I mean, anyone can miss a penalty. I mean, absolutely. No, I mean, I know you were annoyed about 0-3, but your legend Des Walker scored an own goal. I mean, we can't be blamed for that. Whereas Morgan missing a penalty, that's just football. I've got more concern when it comes to a penalty shootout for players that say, "Gaffer, I don't fancy it." I've got more problem with that. But players that step up and who've always delivered and they finally miss it. I mean, Morgan was great every game for us, and he finally misses one in his last match. No, I don't have any animosity towards him whatsoever. He was fantastic for Sheffield United. I think if we'd had the finances, if we'd gone up, he would have wanted to play for Sheffield United. I think he'd have loved to have joined us permanently. We had a wonderful rapport with him and the fans, and we've got a song at the moment which is a bit anti-Morgan Gibbs-White, which I don't really like, but that's just actually because it kind of works. It's more like because of the rhyme scheme it works. It's actually a pro-McAtee song rather than an anti-Morgan Gibbs-White song, and that's purely because McAtee joined when Morgan Gibbs-White left.
How have you felt about the Premier League in general? Because a lot of Forest fans, the glamour's worn off even in the second season. We just, like you mentioned, VAR. We've come to not a lot of fans hate it. Is that really easy for us to say now? Now you guys are relegated and we might be. Do you feel differently about the Premier League, or is there almost, I don't know, the relief isn't the right word to go down, but do you feel like it might be a blessing you can rebuild or something from here?
Release the exact word I used actually when I was asked about how I felt. I've hated VAR since it first came in. I was always against it before it came in, and I got a lot of stick for that. But I maintained that VAR would be bad. I thought it would. At the first World Cup, it was used in well, and then that's because it was hardly used. And it was Russia, wasn't it? The first one, and it was fine. No one remembers that World Cup as like the VAR World Cup. There was a couple of decisions. Portugal, Iran, a bad one, and then the final. But other than that, nothing. It was fine. I was like, okay, if it carries on like this, but of course it won't, because people have to get involved. And now you've got, it's just the same. We've said we use VAR to remove human error. Well, it hasn't. You've just got more humans, but they have more opportunity to look at it, making an error. I don't understand how we've got to this stage. Clear and obvious is the often repeated term. Well, most of these decisions are either so clear and obvious, how can you not give that? Or we look at minute detail and the finest thing and go, oh, I think we can find something in there. So let's have a look at this again and again, and not tell the fans in the stadium, because they're not important. It's actually only money you really get from telly. In fact, we proved with COVID we could carry on without fans. We don't even need them. They're plebs. They're not important to us. So there's no consideration for fans. The stadium experience is significantly worse. You don't really know if you can even celebrate a goal. You feel like you'll look stupid. And we've had that firsthand. I remember at Tottenham away, we scored a perfectly good goal. I mean, I'm still annoyed about it now. A few seasons ago when we finished ninth. And then it was disallowed for Lundstrom's big toe being off. And bizarrely, Tottenham had got the ball back. And it was a second phase, to use a modern term, which I hate, that we then scored from, and it was disallowed. And then we scored again, and I remember our fans were like, hey, can we celebrate? And George Baldock, who was getting the goal, should have been going crazy, and he just did a little fist pump because he had to wait for VAR to check it. And I thought, this is not on. And I hated it when we finished ninth. And people will say, I don't remember you complaining when we finished ninth. I did. I complained all the time. I was constantly, you don't know it because I wasn't doing a YouTube channel then. And the only reason I started getting involved in YouTube was because once football continued without fans in the stadium, I totally switched off. I was like, that's it. Do you know what? I'm going to do something else now because I'm not actually as invested or bothered anymore. I'm going to do something that I'm going to enjoy. I'll do YouTube because football's dead for me. Modern football, I hate it. And I spend a lot of my time when Sheffield United aren't playing watching lower league football all over the world because it's real and it's the football I love.
A lot of our fans feel that way as well. I went to watch a non-league game recently and I actually really enjoyed it. It wasn't a good game, but just no technology involved. It felt more pure. And we discussed VAR to death on this podcast. So I'd very gladly.
So you agree then?
Yeah, I'd cut it right down to goal line technology. I don't even like VAR offsides unless I'd make it completely automated. I don't know if you've seen that clip of Spurs and Chelsea on Twitter where they went through a penalty appeal and a goal, and it was ruled out for offside, and they moved it frame by frame, and even then you couldn't tell it was the right point of contact with the ball. And then they're making lines, and they're saying the assistant VAR, the tech guy, saying, "Is this where you want it? Is this where you want it?" And they move it a little bit to the right, a little bit to the right, like you're hanging a painting, and your missus is saying, "Is it level yet?" And it was like that, and that's still human error to me.
Right, it's not football.
No,
I like football to be as close to the game that you play on the park, jumpers for goalposts as possible. And you can score a goal from a corner. We can all agree on that, right? You can score a goal from a corner. Well, the ball can go off the wrong player, so it should have been a goal kick, and it gets given as a corner. They don't review that. Well, are we reviewing just some things or everything? Because it's either got to be everything or nothing, in my opinion. And you can't have VAR in a cup competition, formally most prestigious cup competition in the world, but only at some grounds. And then bring VAR in for the playoff final when you've not had it in that league for the entire season. It's an absolute nonsense, and it's making a mockery of the fans, and it's like we're doing beta testing in real life.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you say you got to look at everything. Like we had that Willy Bolly one where he was sent off for a second yellow, and it was just a really good tackle against Bournemouth. So I think our fans are sick of it. And the Premier League theme tune got booed on Sunday when we played Man City, but really loudly. The first time it's really filtered through, that was a lot of VAR rage, I think. And Gary Neville got some chants in Carragher as well. That was more about what they said. But yeah, I think Forest fans have lost their love of the Premier League, but we would still kind of love to stay in it as well and stay up this season. Just before I throw one or two more questions at Hal, just a quick word for our sponsors, the Trent Navigation. Saturday, 11th of May, straight after the following game, the one against Chelsea, you can see Rick Parfitt Jr. and his band at the Trent Navigation. Entry's free, of course, and you can get food inside and outdoors. So hopefully, I'm going to say this, Hal doesn't feel this way, but hopefully we beat Sheffield United and beat Chelsea. And then we should be safe, all being well. But that's a big if. One other thing I was going to ask you, would you rather, in a sense, this game was away? Because your home record, it's so bad. But I see you away from home. Like you scored 2 at Man United. That first half at Newcastle, you had loads of shots. Are you a better side away from than at home?
Yeah, even the games we've lost, Palace away, we played really well. Luton away, we won. Bournemouth away, we played really well. We just can't hold on. So, even if we're 3-0 up away from home, which which would be amazing, I wouldn't be confident that we could hold on. The fatigue in the legs. Yeah, I don't know what it is at home. I've never known a Sheffield United team to be better away ever. And I say better away, it's all relative. We're still terrible away. If Man City had this away form, it would be a disaster and they'd be calling for Pep's head. But we are, we're relatively speaking, better away. So yeah, we would probably rather that. I don't know if it would make that much difference. I think Forest obviously going to be fighting for their lives. It's hard to know because we haven't seen Sheffield United play confirmed relegated. So I'm hoping it's pressure off and they just let the football do the talking and we stroll to victory. But I have no idea. It may be that a lot of these players know this is the last game they're going to be playing with Sheffield United, or maybe last few. So really, they're not going to want to get injured, and they'll be speaking to their agents in a few weeks to look for a move.
And just lastly, and it's a very big if with Forest, but if we go 1 or 2 goals up, will the crowd turn? Will they? I've seen some people leave early in some of these games. Or will they stick with their team because it is a rivalry against Forest? How would you expect the crowd to react?
Do I really think it depends what happens, how, who. If Oliver Arblaster makes an accidental mistake with a back pass and Forest score, there's going to be no boos. We'll just try and support him. However, if Vinicius Souza does that, I think it could turn a bit toxic. It's going to be very relative. So we'll see. I'd like to think the Blades fans will just back the team right till the end. We have done all season. Our away following particularly, I know it's a home game, but our away following particularly has been magnificent and a credit to the club. Sell out every away game, vocal throughout, despite an absolutely terrible season, probably the worst in our entire history.
Well, that's a sad note to end on, but we will leave it there. I have to say, I hope Forest put a bit more misery on you, but it's a shame to see, what a rough season it's been for you guys. Do you think you'll bounce back, straight back out of curiosity or not?
Oh, it's too early to tell. We have no idea. We've got so many contracts running out. We don't know if we're going to have any money. We've no idea what the first 11 will be for the start of next season. I think we'll either bounce straight back and have a great season, or we might be flirting with relegation again.
I think, we had a Q&A yesterday where our fan, one of the questions was, would Forest bounce straight back? And it was pretty doubtful because you just don't know what the turnover of players is going to be. So, too early to say. Right. Thanks very much to Hal. If everyone enjoyed that, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. You can become a channel member and do give us a good review on iTunes and Spotify. Hal, I really appreciate you doing this. You did it short notice, I'll say. So you've done me a good turn. Thank you very much.
Anytime, Matt.
You're a good man. Have a good day, everyone, and we shall see you tomorrow for our post-match show.